The Canadian Charter of Climate Change Rights and Responsibilities, an initiative of the Canadian Association for the Club of Rome. Whereas the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms under Article 7 stipulates that everyone has the right to life, liberty and security of the person, whereas, due to a changing climate, these rights are increasingly threatened with terrible consequences unfolding for the planet, its ecosystems, and all living species, including the creation of tens of millions of climate refugees and the likely loss of livelihood and territory for millions more. Whereas this Canadian Charter of Climate Change Rights and Responsibilities is for the sake of those now living and for the enduring sustainability of generations yet to come and respects the traditional wisdom of Indigenous peoples. Whereas we endorse the inclusion of certain responsibilities of all citizens and residents, recognizing that all must play their part, and we the citizens and residents of Canada call for this Canadian Charter of Climate Change Rights and Responsibilities to be enacted and supported by every level of government throughout Canada, federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal. Therefore, the following Canadian Charter of Climate Change Rights and Responsibilities is set before all for signature and ratification. Canadians and residents of Canada have the right to expect prompt action by all current and future governments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that meet or exceed internationally adopted targets. Real and clearly defined measurable goals and defined pathways that include plans for the required infrastructure and technology rollout to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as well as the regeneration of ecological assets. Policy modification to ensure emission targets are met. Progress along chosen pathways must be carefully monitored and new approaches implemented. Where progress is slower than anticipated, incentives, penalties, and regulation to limit emissions by law must be utilized as required, rather than allowing failure or lowering of targets. Adequate funding be allocated to meet all required domestic initiatives and all international obligations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Clear and regular communications at intervals of not more than 1 year by municipal, provincial, territorial, and federal governments to provide accountability and to provide progress reports against greenhouse gas emission reduction goals in all relevant sectors of the Canadian economy. An adaptive approach that is able to respond to potentially improved means, measures, and/or pathways to ensure our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets are actually achieved. Support and initiatives at all levels of government to enable a circular economy with its emphasis on reuse, reduction, and recycling of materials and products so as to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. Canadians and residents of Canada have the responsibility to educate ourselves about current threats to the environment, exercise our democratic rights and responsibilities by seeking to elect officials who make it a high priority to generate and maintain public policy that serves to mitigate climate change where possible, support adaptive measures now required, and who support and view policies directed toward creating a sustainable planet as fundamental. Participate in meaningful and constructive ways to arrest the advancement of climate change. Recognize that each person produces an ecological footprint through resource use and seek to limit our ecological footprints to that which is sustainable for the planet. Take action to modify our activities and lifestyles consistent with reducing demand on fossil fuels and fossil-based products and those that rely on long-distance fossil fuel-based transportation. Make our homes, residences, and modes of transportation less dependent on fossil fuels through the use of energy-efficient devices and practices. Find out more about this charter and environmental rights and duties at CanadianCor.com.